Hello, welcome back everyone. My name is Stacia and I'm just a girl on the internet that likes to talk about movies. And this week's movie is going to be the 1974 movie, Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore. And I'm doing this as a tribute to Diane Ladd, who recently passed away. Although she is not the star of this movie, I don't think there's really any movie that Diane Ladd was a star of. She was a character actor. But this is one of her best performances in that capacity. This is more of Ellen Burstyn's movie, and this is a Martin Scorsese movie. Ellen Burstyn, of course, plays Alice, and she is recently widowed and trying to find a way in this world for herself and her 11, about to turn 12-year-old son. Tommy, played by Alfred Luther III. Before she got married, the only job she ever had was a singer, so she tries to make it as a singer, and they are trying to get to her childhood home of Monterey. They currently live in New Mexico. Monterey is kind of like a fantasy place for her. The last time she truly felt happiness. Ellen Burstyn did this movie straight off her success from The Exorcist, and the studio kind of gave her carte blanche to find a project that she really wanted to do. And she didn't want to do the typical role where you're the adoring wife or you're just the mother, even though she is a mother in this movie. She wanted a role with more grit to it. And she came across the script for Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore. And she is actually the one that gave Martin Scorsese the role as director for this movie. He was coming off of Mean Streets. Francis Ford Coppola suggested that Ellen Burstyn look into Martin Scorsese, this new hip young director coming on the scene. And Ellen Burstyn definitely wanted somebody who could highlight the grittier aspects of the story because she was afraid it would become too cliche. Her only reservation about Martin Scorsese is, did he know how to direct women? Because if you've seen Mean Streets and a lot of other Martin Scorsese movies, but at that time you're just talking Mean Streets, she wasn't sure that he would know how to really direct a woman. And what convinced her is he didn't try to shy away from the fact that he had more of a male-oriented tone. Was upfront, no, I don't have a lot of experience with directing women and knowing women, but I would like to learn. And that's what convinced her to hire Martin Scorsese. And the other thing is Ellen Burstyn really put this movie together, but she declined to take a production credit. And if she would have made more money, of course, you know, with having her salary as a producer on the movie, but also the subsequent sale and licensing of the story and the movie for a TV show, a very successful TV show called Alice that is based on this movie. So with Alice and Tommy's trek to Monterey, they can't just go straight there. They don't have a lot of money. They did sell all of their belongings plus her husband's belongings after he died to get the money in a garage sale type form. But they do get to Phoenix, Arizona from New Mexico. But they have to stop there, and Alice gets a job as like a lounge singer. There she meets a younger man, about 7 years younger, a man named Ben, who she has a little affair with. Ben is played by Harvey Keitel, who Martin Scorsese cast because they've worked with each other before in Mean Streets and Martin Scorsese's first foray into movies. It's 1967 black and white movie, Who's That Knocking at My Door? Ben ends up being married and he ends up being violent and scary. And after an incident with Ben's wife and Ben breaking down the door of Alice's apartment that she's staying at, she and her son hightail it out of there, making it to Tucson, Arizona. And this time, Alice doesn't get a job as a singer. She gets a job as a waitress. And that's when you bring in more of the characters that people who are familiar with the TV show Alice are familiar with. And that is where you get Diane Ladd. Now, Diane Ladd was nominated for Best Supporting Actress for her role as Flo. And like I said, if you're familiar with the TV show, she does not utter the phrase, "you can kiss my grits" in there. But she's the sassy, sultry type of waitress. And she uses that to buffer her tips by having this persona. And it seems the men that frequent Mel's Diner give her more tips because of this persona. At first, her and Alice do not get along that well. She's too brash for Alice. Alice went from her family home in Monterey to being married. And she's 35 now, and she has never been out on her own. And even though her son has a brazen personality, more like Flo's personality, she's offended by hearing a woman talk so openly like Flo does. But they end up being great friends. And the only person that you'll really see that is familiar with viewers of the TV series is Vic Tayback playing Mel. He was the only one that went over to the TV show when it premiered. The character of Tommy on the TV show, I think from the pilot, was Alfred Luther, but he ends up being replaced by Philip McKeon, who is, yes, Nancy McKeon's brother. And they did offer Ellen Burstyn a chance to do the TV show Alice, but she was unwilling to do television, unlike nowadays where people go back and forth between television and movies. Up until very recently, there was this divide of, if you're a movie actor, you do not do television. It was looked down upon. But they did offer it to her, but she said no. So Alice gets played by Linda Lavin in the TV series. And the character of Flo is played by Polly Holliday, whose catchphrase is, "you can kiss my grits." But Polly Holliday ends up leaving the show after a few seasons, and then they did bring in Diane Ladd not to play the character of Flo, but she plays a character of Belle Dupree, who has the same sort of aspects of her character of Flo in the movie. And Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore is filmed on location in Arizona. Even the scenes that are supposed to be New Mexico are actually Arizona. So it was filmed in a combination of Tucson, mostly Tucson, and then Phoenix. And then the beginning segment, which is a fantasy scene of what she sees her childhood as in her happy place in Monterey, is shot on the back lot, building a huge Hollywood set to harken back to movies like The Wizard of Oz. But fun little fact, that movie set version, fantasy version of Monterey at the beginning of the film, that film set cost $85,000 to build. But the film's budget was $1.8 million. It was Martin Scorsese's first chance to make an actual Hollywood film with big budget financing, which $1.8 million for this type of movie back then was considered a larger budget. It did go on to gross over $18 million at the box office. So it was a huge return on investment and helped Martin Scorsese be able to get other movies made. And because this proved to them that he could have a successful film written by an original script by somebody else, and he could play that Hollywood game for them. And the reviews are kind of mixed for this movie. People dismiss this movie as Scorsese's chick flick, which is really dishonoring this movie. It is a really good portrait of a 70s mother who grew up in the society where she's under the system where, you know, you were young, you got married practically right out of high school. If you went to college, you went to college just to find a man. She is the first generation of adult woman who came from that system, who are finding themselves in sort of the women liberation movement. So she is in the generation that is caught between that and trying to make her way as a single mother in the 1970s and raising a young child and trying to find love also. Although that is not the central part of what she's doing. She's trying to realize also the dreams that she gave up to have a husband and a child, which is a complicated task even nowadays, but especially for that generation of women who towed the line between the women's movement and the traditional housewife, which is what attracted Ellen Burstyn to the script. When they're in Tucson, Arizona, she does find love again in Kris Kristofferson's character. His character's name is David. He is a rancher that frequents Mel's Diner, and that's how they met, and theirs is a softer relationship than her younger Harvey Keitel romance with his character Ben. But she is weary since that blew up in her face, and he was revealed to be an adulterer and an abuser. So she eases into the relationship with David, and there is a rocky patch, but in the end, they do find love. And she does find a way to go after her dream, not in Monterey, but in Tucson, and still compromise to go after the dream to be a singer with David's support. So for the cast of this movie, you have a very interesting cast. Of course, you have Ellen Burstyn. I've already mentioned the little boy who plays Tommy, Alfred Luther, who goes on to be in stuff like The Bad News Bears. You have Billy Greenbush playing her husband that passed away. And of course, you have the Harvey Keitel factor, Diane Ladd, Vic Tayback. You also have Valerie Curtis in one of her early roles, playing the third waitress at Mel's Diner, Vera. Kris Kristofferson, a very early role for him. He actually wasn't that confident in his acting, and he and Martin Scorsese actually got along very well for that. Martin Scorsese was having his issues. Kris Kristofferson was having his issues becoming, a capable actor, and they help feed off of each other and really get them through the production of this movie. But you also have a young, post-Disney career, although she does still do some Disney movies after this, but pre-Taxi Driver, Jodie Foster, and of course Taxi Driver, and those are both directed by Martin Scorsese, but she plays the precocious young Audrey who ends up being Tommy's friend. Maybe a little bit of a bad influence for Tommy as well. And you also, in the background, of course, Diane Ladd is Laura Dern's mother, and she was a young child during this movie, and so in the background, one of the diner scenes, you do have her at the end of the bar at the diner. You can spot a very young Laura Dern in the background. It did compete for the Palme d'Or at the Cannes Film Festival in 1974. It was released in December of 1974. It was a commercial success. So it does get nominated for 3 Academy Awards. Of course, Ellen Burstyn was nominated for Best Lead Actress, and she did win that year. She was actually unable to make it to the Oscar ceremony that year, and Martin Scorsese, at her request, accepted the Oscar on her behalf. She asked him to do that in case she won and to make sure he thanked himself for directing her. Diane Ladd was nominated for Best Supporting Actress. This is one of her 3 Academy Award nominations, all in supporting actress roles. Her other 2 were Rambling Rose in 1992, which is famously when her daughter Laura Dern was nominated for Best Actress, and they became the first mother and daughter duo to be nominated for Academy Awards in the same year. But she was also nominated in 1991 for Best Supporting Actress for the David Lynch movie Wild at Heart, which also starred her daughter. The other nomination was for Robert Getchell, who wrote the screenplay for Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore. So the Best Writing Original Screenplay Award. And for those of you who don't remember or don't know, this is the Godfather Part 2 Best Picture year. This is when Francis Ford Coppola wins Best Director for The Godfather Part 2, where he didn't win it for The Godfather Part 1 that went to Bob Fosse for Cabaret. But of course, the original screenplay, which Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore didn't win but was nominated for, that was the year it went to Robert Towne for Chinatown. So the 1975 Oscars had some heavy hitting movies. So for any film fan, especially Martin Scorsese fans, this is an interesting movie of his to watch. It is one of his softer movies. If you think of this and The Age of Innocence, it's one of his genre bending. When you think of Martin Scorsese, you think of his mob movies, his tough guy type of movies. You don't think of Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore or The Age of Innocence, which The Age of Innocence is a fabulous movie of his. So is Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore. You can tell moments of what a Scorsese movie was going to be. He hasn't quite developed his own unique style yet. He hasn't yet found his place, but you can see him working there. You can see that flourish. But the reason to watch Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore are the fabulous performances by Ellen Burstyn and the Kris Kristofferson and Diane Ladd, even Harvey Keitel. Their performances in this movie make this movie. And for its unique position at a time at the changing of women's roles in society, I think that makes it an important movie to watch. And you get a very young pre-Taxi Driver, post-Disney Jodie Foster. I mean, she's not in the movie all that much, but it's very interesting to see her at that time where her career is about to change forever. The 1970s was a very interesting time for the movie industry. They seem to, a lot of the studio system was collapsed at this time, and it's the time where they were struggling to make their way. A lot of these companies, a lot of the old legacy movie studios were in financial ruins, going out of business, being sold, selling off their inventories, trying to figure out how to go on. This is the decade where the blockbuster movie was invented that saved movies going into the 80s. There was a lot of, they were just throwing everything at the wall, seeing what stuck. And so a lot of experimentation was allowed to happen there, and you see the birth of the director-focused movies, which this is an interesting one because Martin Scorsese is right at the forefront of that movement. And when you really think about it, Ellen Burstyn is also, with The Exorcist, with her connection to the actor studio that really revolutionized movie acting starting in like the 50s and 60s. She is an embodiment of that time as well. So if you're a real film buff and like movie history, this is a good one to watch to pad out your movie fandom, whether you like it or not, whether you think it is a great movie or not. It does hold value in that historic sort of movie studying, movie history way. But thank you for joining me. My name is Stacia. Like I said, I'm just a girl on the internet that likes to talk about movies. If you like movies too, like I do, consider subscribing to my channel, giving me a thumbs up, or making a comment on the video. But I love you all. See you next time. Bye.